Hola y bienvenido, mis amigos. First off, I'd like to give a huge special shout out to Matt Brunette, aka, for his 2011 review on DreamWorks Puss in Boots and his best and worst anime films of 2020 video, because I want you to play for mercy from Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. When it comes to this year's animated spin-offs, we got a few. Like, some are terrible, like the Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, and some are fine and enjoyable, like Minions: The Rise of Gru. But when it comes to this decade's DreamWorks sequels, we have a bunch of mediocre ones, like either from the Croods, Trolls, or the Boss Baby. But this year, we did see some promise with last April's The Bad Guys. Now we have a long-awaited Puss in Boots sequel that has been on hold for about a decade. So, how does this film hold? Well, let's find out. It's about Puss in Boots down to his last life after losing so many, leading him to a temporary retirement to keep himself from dying. But when word gets out that there's a wishing star in the middle of a dark, mysterious, magical forest, he teams up with her former cat partner, Kitty Softpaws, and a new member which Puss met at the retirement where Cat Lay's house is, named Burrito, who was actually a dog disguised as a cat, spoiler warning. Now it's up to them to race down and retrieve stars to fulfill their wishes, while there are other bad guys who want the same goal. Following up on its predecessor, one element that occurs during this film is the use of action-adventure in its genre. And so far, there are many of them, with some amazing visuals, and they're much more action-packed than its predecessor. Well, like in its predecessor, all we got is just like chase scenes, but in here we got loads of fight scenes. That's something I highly admire. For any flaws, I believe this follows a similar issue regarding the Shrek the Third, where it revolves around too many villains to even get into and their motivations. Like, we don't know which one we're supposed to be looking out for, since there are plenty of them, like either ranging from scary to emotional to selfish. But on the plus side, while it may somewhat hinder the film, there's actually more heart to the film, like the dynamic between Puss and Kitty of what they want in life when they get the star. So all in all, while there are minor issues that can really hard to struggle with, like too much going on, at least the action adventure will still keep you high up in energy. La animación, well, what do I say about this? Well, for one thing, since we're transitioning to the predecessor's 2011 visuals, where it's mostly like capturing realism with all the textures and fur on the character as well as skin, this follows the same league as The Bad Guys, where it follows a more painterly style with some stop motion mixed into like what Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse first revolutionized. Going from that with like some harsh environments in terms of color, the visuals are much more vibrant. The colors are more beautiful to look at, pleasing to the eyes. There are some action-packed moments where most of the characters would move in a stop motion, then in slower moments they move more realistically. It felt like a nice balance between those styles. The design on the characters feel much more expressive while still hinting a bit of realism, like with Puss and Kitty. But for Burrito, bringing him up again, he's more like a cartoon type of character who moves in terms of his eyes and expressions. Nitpick is like, while it may seem like a visual downgrade, I believe it's still digestible to look at. So all in all, the animation, while might seem different from its predecessor, the colors are much more vibrant. Action makes it feel more tense, and the character designs stay very true. I can say the animation is top notch. It can even be better than its sequels. Characters, well, I'll say that most of them are good. Starting with Puss in Boots himself. He is, while he's down to his last life and wants to fulfill his destiny by retrieving all the lives he gets to revive him and keep him from being dead, he has to learn how to think about what others want and what they mean to them. For Kay Softpaws, she is like a more sensible type of character. Then what I like about her is that she was more than just a love interest than what she was in its predecessor. And their dynamic between her and Puss really adds more heart to them. For the comedy relief, Burrito, he might feel a bit grating at times, but eventually he will pick up with its humor and heart, and he can feel more sympathetic as much with a sad backstory. Now, for the villains, before I get into the issue, let me break them down. Death was like Puss's stalker, and while he does have an intimidating look as a wolf with glowing red eyes and a sinister whistling, he doesn't appear all that much, and it's most like a worthy opponent, and it's wanting to test Puss's life. For other new villains, like an adult version of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, well, they show a much more emotional side to them of what they want when they get to the wishing star. Though there isn't much to talk about them other than that the voice cast, like either from Ray Winston or Olivia Colman, they seem to be fine, I guess. But it won't imply to the same as Big Jack Horner, who's just more like the selfish villain who cares more about getting the wishing star than his crew. I apologize that there isn't an image of him since to copyright reasons, and while it does face some issue of having too many villains, they did their intentions okay, I guess, but not much to do with the film. All in all, the characters, while we have our returning ones, including a new one that can really get into on the action, the other villains are mostly just there to become obstacles to them. After last year's Jack and Jill, we got way too many villains and wish they would just tone down to just only a few with equal screen time. All in all, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish feels like one of the better sequels after struggling 2 years of DreamWorks anime mediocrity of sequels. Either like from Trolls World Tour, The Crew to New Age, and The Boss Baby Family Business. This one feels a better one that we can get into. While the story may be a bit predictable at times with too many villains to get into and some weak comedy, everything else like the animation, the dynamic between the characters, and the action really makes you want to get into this film very much. While this sequel, while it's not up the ranks to either the best sequels like either Shrek 2, Kung Fu Panda 2, or How to Train Your Dragon 2, I say it's more in the middle of it. But I do digress that this film can be one of the best sequels of the Shrek franchise, right along with the 2004 sequel of the Green Ogre himself. So all that said, I'm giving this film an 8 out of 10 for being a good film. Seems like DreamWorks is having a pretty good year. Well, now that I got all the theatrically released animated films of this year out of the way, stay tuned for next month while I have my ranking video of all the animated films released in that decade. Until then, adios amigos.